got company this time as well. This is Gavin Patterson. You've seen his pictures before. Join us. Oh, we are very big. We should win. Okay, let's move around. How's that? Here we go. That's me. That's you. Confirm.
Yeah.
Director of Data at MEF. And today, well, let's sit down, shall we? Let's get ourselves comfortable. Let me do a check. Have you downloaded the app? I'm going to check outside. So you better show it on your way out. Make sure you do download the app. But we're talking about something else right now. We're talking about our consumer trust study report, which is becoming, we did the same last year, was a section, was very interaction. We did like that a lot. And good news, this is the 10th, isn't it? So we should have a cake.
We should have a celebration.
We should have a celebration.
Yeah, so 10 years of MEF Consumer Trust. Here we go.
So we got big news to start as well.
Yeah, so 10 years ago in 2015, I think we covered 10 markets originally. Those markets, we had about 46% penetration of the world population. So, you know, it was quite a good starting point. Last year, we added another 3 markets, which were Canada, Mexico, and Italy.
Yeah, right.
13 markets, then up to about 50% population of the world in the markets that we surveyed. And this year, we've upped it by another 2, so we've added in Indonesia and Egypt, so now it's about 55% world penetration population of the survey respondents that we cover. So very, very positive moving forward.
And I was going to say, it's very good to know that the breadth of the population, but also the longevity, the 10 years, you got an entire benchmark of study across the different years, so you can see the model developing. Sorry?
No, I was just going to say, there's a lot of data in there. 10 years worth of survey of 10 markets, now 15 markets. Split down between OS, age groups, gender, thousands of data points. I don't want to push MEF data, but if you want to know more about MEF data, we've got something downstairs in the Club MEF area. Come and speak to me or Bia. We can tell you a lot more about it.
So great.
So, here we go. We're going to concentrate on these 3 markets today. So the survey that we're running is still going on, but we've got very early results in. We've managed to get information for the US, the UK, and Spain in time to put something together for you all here today. And we're going to have a little look at those 3 markets and what the sneak peek at the data is telling us.
So just to repeat, our full data, because as you know, all members get full data as well as reports, specific reports of that. Not available yet. We're still compiling the information, but 3 countries we do have.
3 countries.
And it's just to keep you, interested, we're going to share those today.
Yeah. So the report will be available probably about June. We've got a lot of data counting to do and report writing. But in terms of these 3 markets, we can look at certain things. So we're going to concentrate on trust, obviously, is a big part of the Mobile Consumer Trust Survey. And last year we started the Trust Index, where we look at awareness and control and safeguarding and can sort of come out with a user benchmark for the Trust Index in online activities. Within the survey as well, we've got a lot of information. We've got the different services that are used. Everything from video to social media to radio, TV.
Perfect. So let's have a look at some of these numbers and see what they are saying.
Well, in terms of the Consumer Trust Index, we have a bank of questions that look at control. We've got a bank of questions that look at awareness and safeguarding as well. And there's 3 particular questions that we use to take the Trust Index, which are very well worded. We've got them here. We've got awareness. When I share my personal data, I'm aware of how it may be used. In terms of control, when I share my personal data, I remain in control of it. And safeguarding, I believe there are sufficient safeguards to keep my data out of the hand of fraudsters, because it's a perception of what we think is available to us that determines how we behave and what we do online. Because all the safeguards might be there and all the controls might be there. If we don't believe they are there, we will act accordingly. And safeguarding is becoming increasingly important. I mean, it's not just about keeping fraudsters away from our data, but I mean, I think we had the Congress hearing in the US at the end of January with the big tech companies there, which was about harm to individuals. I mean, I think the session was actually called Big Tech and the Crisis of Online Child Sexual Exploitation. So safeguarding is, a very important thing that we need to look at and take, quite seriously in terms of what's going on. So these are the main three things that we look at to bring together the Trust Index. And this is it. So just for these three markets, when we've got all 15, we'll have a better view. But all in all, it's not great. Averaging about 52% between the three of them. We've got the US, where you can see red or green. It's where there's been significant change that's statistically relevant. The rest of it's within the 3% margin. So in the US, awareness of how data is being used hasn't really changed. People's idea of how much control they've got of it is down 4%, and safeguards down about 1%. So overall, the trust index for the US has gone down from 55 to 53%. Now, you think, what's 53%? It's not great. It's not in the very poor area, it's not in the bad area, but it's not in the good area. So we don't have a lot of trust in what we're doing. Similar situation, I guess, with the UK, where everything is about the same. Trust index of about 49%. Now, the one that stands out here is Spain, which is up here, I think, where everything seems to have gone up quite a lot. Normally, when you see change in one particular market, it's because something's happened. The only thing I could really see is there was an amendment to legislation last year on data protection and e-commerce, which was either very well communicated and accepted by everybody immediately, or there are other things at play.
But if you look at some of those, I think there is a bit of a history. If I remember historically, the US was getting slightly better. Now I can see a bit of red in there. And maybe Spain is a different story. Maybe there's something locally that has been behind that. Usually, in a year when the public opinion can change if there is a big debate or something like that. Has anything happened in Spain that would?
Well, only that amendment to the legislation that we saw last year. So otherwise, it'd be local factors like, I don't know, maybe WhatsApp's more used here.
Acceptance of, and some of the element is, as you can see, you say it's bad, and I can agree that, and I should probably say that equally. There's almost a smaller majority, but there's still a 40-something% of people that are saying it's fine. And we'll see that later. Eventually, we'll get free services for some of the data economy behind that. So in a market or in a situation where the economic condition is particularly changing, that might change your interest and how you're happy to do a trade-off between giving your data, trust in it for a free service as well. So who knows? But we'll see more once we have all of the other countries as well, so we'll be able to do a bigger comparison as well.
So what else do we see? We're looking for things that stand out. Obviously, we haven't a lot of time to look at the data. This is just for the US. So it's what allows you to feel in control of the data you share. And the main thing we're seeing is data abstinence. So a means of being in control is by not doing stuff. So we've got only use services I trust, 40 to 43%. Share as little as possible, and delete accounts I don't use. This middle one here, delete accounts I don't use, is actually quite important because you move on, you forget about it. But if you've registered and you've put in your email address or whatever it is and your password, and that account is dormant, if that account's hacked and it's a similar password and email as you're using for other accounts, that could be compromised. I was telling Gary, I was filling in some utility readings last week, and when I went to the site to do it, it said, oh, can you change your password because there's been a breach. It wasn't on their site, but it was on a different site, and they'd managed to tell me that without sending me an email saying there's been a breach. Click here, and I go, oh, I'm not going to do that. So it's quite a good way of doing it. I felt like that was quite good safeguarding. Without not doing anything, abstaining from data, there's the two little bits that we see at the end here that may be seeing a slight change in how people are looking at data and protecting themselves online, that we're seeing a slight increase in actually taking interest in what the terms and conditions are, which is from 28 to 30%, and then use tools to protect my data, quite a big increase. Maybe it's personal firewalls and VPNs, but people are now actually thinking about how they can protect their online identities.
So it is a big topic. for the consumers out there, but even for us as an industry, whether you're working in business messaging, in ad tech, or downloading an app, the people are, through data abstinence, trying not to share as much as they could, which is effectively limiting the scope of our economic activity eventually. So unless we get a bit more of trust, we're not going to get the higher level of business that we're looking for. Well, more work to be done there, I guess. And here is looking at them year by year, I guess.
Yeah, so this is slightly different. So this isn't the Consumer Trust Index, and it isn't how you in control of your data. This was a separate question. I agree I get valuable services in return for sharing my data. It was going quite well until last year. And then you can see suddenly this year, well, Spain is still increasing, but the US and UK falling. I mean, the UK quite dramatically. So again, these could be due to local issues. But if we're seeing that there's not an awful lot of trust in online protection, and people feel they've got less control of what they're doing, and here they're actually saying as well, the value of the services that they're getting in return for sharing data is going down. It's not painting a great picture. Everything seems to be going on a slightly downward spiral, downward path this year. So in terms of a long-term trend, it's looking a little bit shaky. It's only 3 markets, and we haven't got all the data in yet. We haven't analysed it all, but it's not looking the continued trend that we were seeing up until last year.
Well, I think there will be local factors as well, but the trends are there, and the last year trend seems to be pretty worrying. So let's keep an eye for the other countries as well. And I would say probably in the case of the UK, it is true, the public opinion was moved quite sensibly. There was a lot of discussion about fraud, there's a lot of discussions about social networks and security, again, for minors, etc. So we're potentially there by some temporary factors, but that trend is probably not completely surprising, I guess.
So, now this is it the paradox in it, or is it the reason? I don't know. So, the top 10 mobile services used in the past 6 months. The change in the green here is since 2020, so over the past 4 years. See, massive increase in people using services. So although we don't necessarily trust what we're getting back, and we don't see the value in sharing our data in return for the response we're getting from the services, we're actually using the services a lot more, markedly so. 79% on the falling off the bottom here, but I think we've got listening to music. 77% was social media. 76% is video content. We've got more going down to the end on podcasts, which again, very interesting. An increase in people listening to podcasts. But all of this is showing that our appetite for data and services is still growing. We just don't necessarily trust the environments that we're getting it in.
I just noticed that you don't have a legend at the bottom, so you're just nodding, but we will provide the right information later on our website, so you can see that slide as well. But again, just reminded, the first thing was listening to music. The last bit was listening to a podcast. And in between, effectively all the services we're seeing, video should be number 2, etc.
Yeah, video. So, as well as MEF Radio, we should have MEF TV.
Oh, one step at a time. Download the MEF Radio app first. We'll talk about TV later, but we do have a YouTube channel. Now, the big thing is the green boxes at the top. That shows that growth.
Double-digit growth over the last 4 years, for more or less all of them. I think banking was the only one that was still single-digit, but double-digit growth. So, as I say, the appetite for service is there. I mean, it's massive.
So this is a growing industry, which keeps on growing as well. Fantastic. Well, what are you going to be serving us? Because we've got that divided also later on into users, countries, etc. We'll delve into the details in the next report as well.
This was interesting. So one of the questions we have in there is, what do you think in terms of the free speech on these particular apps? And do you think that free speech is impacting your belief in the content that's on there? So we've got Facebook and Twitter stroke X. An increase in the free speech is possible on this platform for Facebook, fairly flat for X. But in terms of, I believe, the content that I get on there, both falling. So we're possibly seeing a trend here where the rise in free speech is impacting the trust in the content that's on there. And I mean, free speech is that the right term for it? Saying whatever you want is not necessarily free speech, but that level of activity on those platforms and then believing what you're reading on it is something that we saw last year as well, and it's continued this year.
So it's getting worse for the believing. I am surprised to see that Twitter, now X, despite its massive changes and unfiltered content, is still pretty much, people are not seeing it as any difference from what it was before. So their view in terms of the freedom of open speech hasn't changed. Probably something in their marketing proposition is not going exactly as was intended. We'll come back to it.
Let me go on. So also, we look at part of the Consumer Trust Survey. There's everything in there. There's all sorts of behaviors, what we do on smartphones, what we don't do on smartphones, and there's messaging in there. There's mobile payments. There's everything. Here is some messaging or some omni-channel information. How I prefer to receive messages from companies and how I prefer to interact with companies. Very interesting. So prefer to receive messages from companies is basically saying the top one has fallen off. It should say email. It's email me, don't call me. The third one down is phone calls. A lot of them have fallen off here. So email has gone down, phone calls have gone down. Sorry, email's gone up, phone calls gone down. And texting is about the same, within 2 points.
Yeah, I would say not doing too well for a market where SMS last year in US was still growing for person-to-person messaging. The entire pie of messaging, SMS messages, was growing. And yet we're seeing here almost more growth in the multimedia messaging or appreciations of how to being communicated to than SMS. That's not sounding too positive. It's probably we need to look a bit more in details for the industry as well.
No, but what we do see is, although SMS is down slightly, when you look at the rich channels up here, they've all gone up slightly. So even though the US, which is primarily overwhelmingly an SMS market, Instagram, Facebook, Android messages stroke RCS, I think Apple Business was up there as well, MMS, all rising slightly. So even in the US, we're seeing that sort of turn towards, we would like to engage in more rich messaging. And the same on the other side with how I want to interact, how I want to speak to brands. We've got, mainly it's texting sort of falling ever so slightly, but we're seeing the two sort of major ecosystems that are moving beside that with Apple and Google, both sort of either level or rising slightly. So this idea of rich messaging is even taking grip in the US.
And obviously, because it's US, we can see that Facebook is in there as well. Facebook's messaging instead of WhatsApp as well. So more information available if we want to look at. But some interesting changes, I would say. That was, for me, one of the surprise of his numbers. The US is not as direct as we expected. I think there might be some changes coming.
Yeah. And regulation. Obviously, within consumer trust, we've got to look at regulation. These were the three top areas in the three markets that we had the info for. So basically, ensuring big tech doesn't have too much power over data. That is still the overriding concern in all three markets that we've got there, either the first or second. Preventing harmful content online and ensuring age-restricted content cannot be accessed. Still the major concerns in most markets. But we do have AI creeping in on the UK, and it was a very close fourth, I think, in the US as well. So even though AI has only been recently sort of talked about, it's now becoming something that consumers are becoming aware of as well and becoming concerned of.
So consumers, obviously, these are themes for regulators, but look at this, but even for companies, we talk about other companies, what we're doing, what's your representations in the industry as well. There's something to be concerned about, especially the safeguarding of minors there, and we've seen it politically, and it's now a business issue as well. What are we doing about that?
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, they're the main sort of takeaways that we've managed to sort of look at over the past 3 or 4 days since we got all the information in. So growth in usage of services, not necessarily matched by the trust that we're seeing. A possible negative correlation between the amount of free speech and the belief in content that we're seeing on platforms. Data abstinence is still a method of control over how we sort of use online content. And AI regulations now creeping onto the agenda for people in terms of being aware of something that they need to think about in the future.
Well, there is always that dichotomy we talked about. More services have been used, people still not trusting new services. But that is what we've lived for the last few years with. And who knows if it's mechanism is going to break, or it's still going to be about the balancing of those two.
Yeah. So that's just a little sneak preview of all of the data on there. There's a lot of it, and it can feed into MEF data. So I'm going to talk a little bit about MEF data. If you haven't had a look at it, have a look at it. It's here. It's on our website. We launched it in November last year at our AGM. We started with 45,000 data points, and it's basically looking at 218 markets worldwide and 15 sub-regions, 4 bigger regions and global totals. I mean, and we have all of this information for all of those markets. So it's looking at the population, the number of active users, the number of SIM connections, what the handset breakdown is. So we had smartphones, feature phones, people with no phones, people with basic phones, and 45,000 or so data points. And then we updated that in January, and we added in a lot more information. So we added in on the connections, we added in the actual active SIMs in markets. So data-only SIMs, talk, text, and data SIMs, talk and text-only SIMs, M2M SIMs. And then within all the smartphone and feature phone numbers as well, we managed to break out OS, Android, other. So all of that information is now available in all of those markets, and it's all free to MEF members on MEF data. So you can look here if you don't, or come and see us downstairs. We're happy to talk to you about it. And that's kind of what it looks like at the moment. So you can look at the active mobile users. We've got 2 views of users. We've got total users, and we've also got adult users, because we do have some brands and they want to see who they can actually target, what the size of the market is. And we have all the active mobile SIM connection types as well. Let's say we've got the talk and text only, talk and text and data, M2M, then we've got the smartphone breakdown, we've got the feature phones, the feature phone breakdown, no mobile phones, and the mobile operator market shares as well. 218 markets. I mean, there's a lot of information on there. And go on.
I was going to say, and it's all the historical numbers that we as an industry, with your help as well, can verify in the market, either from sourcing it from regulators and other sources, but also very important, you on the market telling us whether it's right or wrong. So it's all your data and is approved and updated by you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we went through about 160 regulators. I mean, some of them are really good. Like, I don't know if any from Tunisia is here, but Tunisia, great regulator. They gave it exactly as we wanted it. Everything was broken out perfectly. Other regulators, data only might be included in IoT. It might be included in mobile broadband. We've got to read through a lot of information to get the numbers, but we're quite happy with them. And we're going to expand in the summer of this year. When we have a new website, because we couldn't put everything on the existing website, we're going to put in more historical information. So we're going to go back to 2017. We're going to introduce household data and fixed voice and fixed mobile broadband. We're also looking to introduce the connections data. So we'll go from 2G up to 5G connections and 2G to 5G users. And then we're going to go up to 171,000 data points. So we're moving towards that idea that we'll want 1 million eventually.
Eventually?
Eventually. 1 million, hopefully.
A million is a nice number. We should be growing.
It was around
bigger than that.
Anyway,
come on.
So we can put in all the data that we've got from the Consumer Trust Survey. All of that can go in as well. So we've got 15 markets now, going back to 2015. So lots of data. If we just take the data that we don't have to take the OS splits and the age splits and the gender splits. I think even then we've got another 230 or so thousand data points, so up to 400,000 data points in total.
Getting closer? No, you don't give you don't give a prize yet, but yes, okay.
We've got MEF Data Plus.
Okay.
Oh no, yeah, launched January this year, where we did a cooperation with Mobile Squared. They got all our user data. We took some of their business channel data. So we've got SMS, WhatsApp APIs, RCS, Fiber, traffic spend users. All of that's on there now, so you can see all of that. Another 60,000 data points. And we intend to roll this out to the other ecosystems as well. So it won't just be business messaging, but we'll try and do the same for connectivity, for mobile IoT, for content and advertising, across everything we do. And then fraud. I mean, everybody seems to be interested in fraud when we speak to the members. So that runs across most of our ecosystem. So we're going to try and bring fraud data out as well.
Good. Time is up, but tell me, how close are we going to be?
Well, so 760,000 data points with MEF Data and MEF Data Plus. We're getting towards 1 million. Okay. If we update everything at the end of 2024, because this is only 2023 data, if we update that, we're going up to 876,000 data points.
Getting better.
That's nearly 1 million. That's okay?
That's better.
Okay. If we break out the MNO market shares and put that into all of the data that we've got, so we can look at what the MNOs are actually doing in each market worldwide, what the handset spread is.
What's that?
And we've got nearly 100 million data points.
Oh, now you're talking.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Now,
on that note.
Yeah, on that note, I'll be busy for about another year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we will be busy reading some of the results from the Consumers Trust data, and you as MEF members can shape all of these, obviously. We're trying to serve you and your interests. So more resources for the industry. Thank you, Gavin. I think we do not have time for... If there is one question, anybody would be interested in challenging or understanding more some of the data, do not be shy, because we are not. I can see some willing, not willing. We will have later, you will be around, so you can still reach downstairs, go into the Club MEF and have a discussion with Gavin. For now then, time is up. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gavin. Thanks for the conversation.